Hello and welcome. Well, we've got an interesting show for you tonight. My guest is a very interesting guy. Mitch Pearlstein is with me. He and I did a show probably 6 or 7 years ago.
How about 20?
20?
Yeah.
He says 20. He's probably right. And
No, that's right. We did do one 6 or 7 years ago.
I think
Because
so.
we did a couple. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No,
Didn't
no,
mean to
no.
interrupt.
We go back anyway. So I'm delighted he could be here tonight.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about a topic that I think we're all thinking a lot about. Some of us are talking about it, some of us don't want to talk about it, but we're talking about it tonight, and that is, why do we not have people speaking up when they disagree with what's going on or with each other? What keeps people holding back so much, as we see right now in our culture? I should tell you that we are taping this in February of 2025. Things are changing daily, quickly, so I want to give you that perspective. I want to tell you just a little bit about Mitch, and then we'll delve into the topic. Mitch is the founder, back in 1990, of the Center for the American Experiment, a conservative think tank. And I know you've probably heard about it. A lot of attention has been given to the thinking that comes out of it, a lot from Mitch, who was the president for 25 years and
Essentially.
is
Yeah.
now a president emeritus. But he's done other things too, and I just want to list a couple of them. He was working with the George Bush the first presidency, as well as Reagan's presidency, in the Department of Education. So we're thinking right now about the department. Prior to that, he was the editorial writer for the Pioneer Press. He also worked with Governor Quee way back, and he was a assistant policy advisor, consultant, kind of right-hand guy.
Speechwriter for the governor.
Speechwriter,
Though he didn't
right.
like when I identified myself that way.
He's a wonderful writer also, just in terms of other writing. He has written about 5 books and is right now finishing up with a 5th or 6th,
7th, yeah.
6th, 7th.
Something.
This book, we'll talk about it a little at the end of the show, but it's got the theme of redemption, and it is a book about second chances, and it sounds like it's going to be great. So welcome.
Thank you.
All this.
Sorry I interrupted so many times.
No, that's just fine. You wrote, and many of you probably saw, a really noticeable editorial in the op-ed page of the Star Tribune about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago.
2 days after. It ran 2 days after the inauguration.
That's right. And with Peter Bell as a co-writer. And in that article, you talked a lot about how people have held back, as I mentioned in the intro, in terms of sharing their upset feelings about what's happening in our country right now. And particularly, we're wondering, where are the Republicans, and why aren't they speaking up? And I've thought a lot about this in the last year or so.
Tell me.
Wondering, I don't quite understand, but as a staunch Republican back in the day, I thought you would have some insights. And did you, first of all, though, did you get feedback from fellow Republicans about your article?
Not as much as you might imagine. The piece was headlined, "We look forward to the day when we can call ourselves Republicans again."
Yes.
Challenging your own team is difficult. It offends people.
Very difficult.
And I had stayed away from publicly talking about my great displeasure with Trump for all that time. I didn't want to undercut Center of the American Experiment. And as I say, it's very uncomfortable to challenge a lot of old friends, but I reached the stage, and Peter Bell reached the same stage about the same time,
Mhm.
that it would have been not brave, not good for us to keep our mouths shut.
Mhm.
So, a day before Christmas, we were having lunch, and we said, "Why don't we do this column?" Which we did. And as I say, it ran 2 days after the inauguration. It got a fair amount of play, in some respects not as much as you might imagine, because people don't necessarily want to get involved and challenge
Right,
somebody
I can.
like me on this, though other people are more than happy to say dirty things about me. Uh, but generally, what happens in these kinds of situations, you're more likely to be ignored than anything else. But we wanted
Sort
to
of too
say,
hot to touch, maybe.
uh, or just ignoring it.
Mhm.
Frankly, I'm being a bit cynical here, uh, but we felt compelled because we were complaining about senior Republicans, all Republican politicians, people we knew were very displeased with Trump's approach, but weren't saying anything about it. And how could we challenge them if we weren't saying anything about it? So we wrote this piece and we explained why we were not at all happy with what was going on in our former party. I don't call myself a Republican anymore. I'm an independent. And
Mm.
that was the piece.
And you really admitted to feeling some guilt and some vulnerability in
Hmm.
terms of
Yeah.
speaking out. I was
And as it
curious,
turns out, it was no big deal. We weren't beaten up. Yeah.
right? Right, you weren't stoned and
No, not at
ran out
all.
of town. Um, do you hear other Republicans quietly in small groups getting together for dinner, etc., talking like you and Peter were talking the day before Christmas?
I haven't heard too much of it directly because I haven't been very much involved in the political life of any sort in the last couple of years, but I hear from other politicians and other people.
Mhm.
Uh, my focus, though, is yeah, and I assume that is frequently the case, and I understand again their hesitations. When we talk about people not wanting to talk about these kinds of things, I think people, generally speaking, are saying fair amount around the edges, but my emphasis is really on people in public life. I
who
want
have some
people in public life, in this instance, particularly Republicans,
who have
who have
responsibilities.
a moral responsibility, among
Mhm.
others, to say this is not the way
Mhm.
we should do it. Our party should not be seen as rude and crude. We should respect facts, not to make fun of facts. There's
Mhm.
so many things about this administration and what led up to it, his previous 4 years and the campaign leading up to this election, that I find, watching my words here now, truly unacceptable.
Mhm.
And we are better than this.
Mhm.
Uh, Without question, we have to protect our borders. There's no question about that, and we didn't do it. And there's no question that some people need to be deported.
Mhm.
But with Trump, he goes around boasting about sending people back to horrific situations where they're going to die. And that is beneath us.
Mhm.
A little compassion in terms of kicking people out of jobs, often, frequently. Uh, a government has to reduce the number of people working for whatever the reason might be. But I would appreciate it when this happens, that there is some sense of the compassion necessary when you are destroying a person's
Mhm.
professional life and undercutting their families financially and in other ways. And that so rarely happens when there are major reductions in force. Same thing in the business world. I don't like that either. We can point to any number of things. I don't like that he is being so nasty to Canada. What kind of nonsense is that? What kind of nonsense is talking about making Canada a 51st state and annexing it?
Mhm.
What sense does it make to forget about Ukraine and supporting Ukraine and sidle up to Putin? Uh, we need more Republican office holders, conservative office holders to challenge this. And I would like to think we're beginning to get some movement in that direction.
There is just beginning to get a little
Yeah,
pushback right
yeah.
now. Just beginning. I'm wondering if if the legislators, the Republican
Mm.
legislators, do not understand that a lot of the things that are being proposed by the president are going to hurt their constituents.
I
It's,
think they do.
they do, but
Yeah.
they aren't speaking up in
Because
spite of it.
I'm speculating here, but I think it's a
Mhm.
legitimate speculation. They're afraid of this guy,
Afraid of,
of Trump.
mhm,
The term
but
is
afraid that he'll,
primary them, that
uh-huh,
he'll make certain that they don't get reelected the
mhm,
next time,
mhm,
and they
mhm.
get afraid. There haven't been very many Republican office holders to challenge Trump in the way that I would like to see him challenged. And son of a gun, they're not necessarily in office anymore.
Well, that is true.
Yeah.
You wonder though if people could be brave, if there would be a real shift, if 2/3 of the, I mean, this is just
Mhm.
perhaps a pipe dream, but let's say 2/3 of the Republican senators stood up and said in mass,
Yeah.
"We're not going along with this. Come up with something better." What would happen? Um, do you
Well,
think
he would
there's
be
any?
dreadfully offended and angered by that, talking
Mhm.
about Trump. And when these office holders sought reelection 2 years, whatever the number may be, as I say,
You
he
still think there'd
he
be
would do anything
retribution?
that he could to defeat them. Compare that, not exactly parallel situations, but not that far away either, with Nixon and Watergate. It reached the stage where he was going to be impeached, and Republicans on that panel were going to make certain he got impeached. And it was either 3 or 4, I think it was 4 Republican senators went to visit
Right at
Nixon,
the
uh,
last minute, didn't
right,
they?
with Barry Goldwater being one of them, and said, Mr. President, you don't have the votes. What you have done is not right. And persuaded him, I don't know if they used the language directly, to resign.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying Trump this time around has done anything impeachable. He did that the last time.
Mhm.
Uh, but it would certainly be nice, though I know it would be a matter of sacrificing themselves if some senators went to see Trump now and said something similar.
Well, that would be a solution, wouldn't it, if he would agree? But it sounds to me like you're saying, and
Mhm.
what I read, that that wouldn't be something he would agree to, in spite
Oh,
of.
he would be as mad as can be and take
Mhm,
vengeance.
mhm.
He would try to avenge this terrible thing that
Is
people
there
have done to him.
any history, uh, parallel in history, Mitch, that you can think of that we can compare this to?
I can't think of another American situation that is the equivalent of this, where someone from, well, first of all, a president would be that nasty,
Mm,
uh, that oblivious and uninterested in facts, and is working now with someone who is not elected by anybody, Musk, who can be so offensive. The richest, think about it, the richest guy in the world,
mhm,
showing no compassion whatsoever
mhm,
about what he is doing.
mhm. And
This is the
that's a
situation we're in.
whole
Yeah,
another chapter in this
yeah.
whole story, isn't it?
And the kinds of people Trump often surrounds himself with.
Um, I just heard today about the latest appointment for the FBI assistant
Yeah,
director,
yeah.
a man who is an election denier, and you wonder,
A fine fellow, I'm sure. Yeah.
wow. Um, Do you think that the Republican Party is going to survive this 4-year period? Because can we go back to the days of more moderate Republican existence and the importance, really, of having two strong parties?
I believe in the great cycles of American politics and American history. We move from left to right to left. Politics, life takes different forms. So when we talk about the possibility of things turning more moderate, I believe the answer is absolutely yes, though that moderation would not necessarily resemble the moderation of the last time.
Okay, so you've got hope.
I have hope. I grew up believing, and I'll be 77. I'm on the cusp of 77. I have believed very deeply in American exceptionalism, that we're not going to go down.
I think most of us do, really.
And know what I also have believed in, and now I'm having my doubts? I wound up early on hearing from teachers and others, at least I think I did, about the infinite wisdom of the American people. Have you ever heard that term? I mention it to people they haven't heard. I remember hearing it all the time. But right now, the American people are not showing infinite wisdom where this is concerned. And that's very disappointing. And one of the subtleties of writing that column is that what I was in essence saying was that more than half the American voters got it wrong. And when you think about it, accusing half the American voters of anything bad is pretty arrogant. So one has to be careful about that too, and I understand that. Let's just say I don't have a political future.
You're not running for office, but hearing that you've got hope is good. Do you think there have to be certain things that are important and necessary to do, though, in order to ensure that, in terms of the Republican leaders that are maybe watching and observing and thinking, what can we do to hang on to the core of the party?
What you just reminded me of was a conversation, and here I sound like I'm name dropping. When I was at the Pioneer Press, I had an interview with Bill Bennett when he was Secretary of Education in D.C. It was just Bill and me and Bill's lieutenant at the time, who turned out to be a great friend. And we were coming to the end, as it turned out. I saw him looking at his watch. And I said, Mr. Secretary, we haven't been talking about budgets and things like that. I was an editorial writer. I could ask big questions. I said we were talking about values and all that good stuff. And how do we improve education? I'm forgetting exactly the terminology I use. How can we make things better? And he said, we have to say what we believe in our hearts to be true and say it over and over and over again. And I've been using that.
Well, that's a beautiful
response
quote, isn't
for years.
it?
I just forgot about how I phrased the question. Yeah, we have to have more people doing it in and out of political life, and just hope you reach a state where it's beginning to take hold.
Say it one more time, just for the viewers to let it sink in.
What we need to do is say what we believe in our hearts to be true and say it over and over and over again.
I like that.
I like it.
Yeah, that's a great quote from Bill Bennett.
Yeah, I would use it frequently, and he's a good friend, and I had him write the blurb for 2 of the books, I think. 1, 2. And I finished one book by using that quote, and he wrote me, said, why don't you stop using that quote? He was getting tired of it.
Well, I bet he loved it, though.
Yeah.
Now we've got, a long 3.5 years left more right now to go through if things don't get better. Do you think there are some tips for psychologically uh, handling things when they're not going the way people want.
To remind ourselves that this too shall pass. To
This
get
too shall
old and
pass.
take solace in the fact that time moves really fast when we get to be old,
Yes,
and
yes.
that we live through it once before. We've lived through a lot of things, and I don't want to make this sound more dreadful than it is or that it might be, but life goes on. Life
Yeah,
goes on.
life goes on. Well, that's good. I mean, we
Yeah,
need to be reminded of
yeah.
positive things that have gotten us through all kinds of messes in the past, right?
One of the things that intrigues me, changing gears a bit, whenever I watch some movie based during the World War II years or something or other. Uh, things are really bad, but they have community life and family life that looks pretty decent. Somehow we persist.
You know, I do think, yeah, people can maybe hunker down and give more percentage-wise to the family
Yep,
for
yep,
this
yep,
period.
yep.
We've only got 5 minutes left, I just realized. And I want to have you quickly tell us
Okay.
a little bit about the theme of your book, your new book, because it's quite revolutionary in some ways.
I appreciate your saying that. I wouldn't agree that it's that revolutionary, but I'll go along with it. Uh, I'm a board member of something called the Redemption Project. It's an organization that helps guys and now women coming out of prison get on with their lives. It's a reentry program. It's a very, very good one where it is reducing recidivism rates dramatically. So I'm a director, and I agreed to write a book about this place several years ago. And then the funding ran out, so I stopped writing. And then I said, what the heck, I'm going to do it anyway. So the book is titled Second Chance Hiring, an Economic Necessity and a Moral Good.
That subtitle
Yeah.
is important, isn't it?
Yes, actually, it's been changed. My publisher didn't like the word moral, so it's now ethical.
Oh, okay.
I disagree with the publisher, and we'll see what they eventually come up with. But it is in our better nature, the better angels of our nature, to help people in those kinds of situations coming out of prison get jobs and get on with their lives. Though having said that, it is complicated
And
and scary.
you don't mean jobs that are all menial,
No, no,
are,
not at all. Not,
you mean real jobs.
uh,
I mean, jobs of
sometimes you
all
got to start with something
ranges.
menial. I had
Uh-huh.
menial jobs, but yeah,
But I
people
mean,
jobs
the
that people
range should be open.
can support themselves and
Hmm.
their families, hoping that they would have families, their choice, of course. Um, so that is the book, and uh, people are pleased that I'm writing it, and I am pleased and proud that I am writing it, and we'll see if it makes a difference.
Um, some of the statistics that I read in the intro to the book, 1 out of 7 people in our country right now has had some real trouble with the law.
Yeah,
Um, the numbers are huge in terms of how many people are in prison and then will be getting out,
and then going back,
95%,
and then going
and a
back.
lot go back.
Yeah.
What, like 80 some percent?
Uh, there are some numbers like that. I I'm more comfortable talking about 50 or 60% of the people
Okay,
going back, and some of them go back not for committing new crimes, but for breaking some parole rules, such as
right,
drinking
right.
or something or other. So they're not
It's not
necessarily
all.
uh, committing a real crime again, but many are, and they're doing it frequently. Yeah.
So it's a big thing we
So
need
when
to get
people
working
are
with.
fearful of crime,
Sure.
and it is not racist, it's not anything of the sort to say uh, when people are fearful that they're doing something bad. It's absolutely natural and normal and healthy.
Mhm.
Uh, but that is the environment in which we have to increase the percentage of people coming out of prison and being accepted and getting jobs and doing well. When I say it's
we can have
complicated,
an
that's at the heart
example
of the
then.
complication.
Right now, I want to shift gears back to
Okay,
our
sure.
main topic, but the book sounds great, Mitch. Really, really interesting. If you want to learn more about the Center for the American Experiment, there's a website and it's americanexperiment.org. We'll put that on the screen. Look it up. They're an interesting think tank group. So
Very proud of it.
yeah, I bet you are. Well, thank you, Mitch, for coming down
Very
again.
great pleasure to see you
Yeah,
again.
it's great to have you back. Best of luck getting the book wound up and on the shelves.
The publisher has it. The publisher's just going to be very slow in getting it out. That's all.
I know you kind of have
Yeah.
to turn it over.
Yeah.
Well, good luck and
Thank
thank you for tonight.
You be well.
Thank you. Thank you for joining Mitch and I. I've been talking with Mitch Pearlstein. If you're tuning in late, the founder of the Center for the American Experiment, among other things. So we've had a good talk. I hope you've enjoyed listening and thinking and pondering, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.